I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, not another story. I have heard enough stories. I'm tired of all these stories. So what if I told you your story? What if I told you a story about you? Would you be interested in that story? Something tells me you might be just a tad bit interested in your story. I know what you're thinking now. You're thinking, how does this woman know my story? She doesn't even know me. You're right, I don't know you. But I know that your story is a human story. And because your story is a human story, your story is a love story. So now you're thinking, what does this have to do with the title of this talk? This talk is titled Racism, Not Racists, the Stories of a Black Immigrant. What does my story have to do with this talk? Where's she going with this? Once upon a time, you were born. I was born. You had a childhood. I had a childhood. You grew. I grew. One day, you had an experience that made you notice something about yourself that you never really paid attention to. For you, maybe it was your fashion choices, your height, your age, your weight, or something else. For me, it was my skin. One day you had an experience that made you doubt your self-worth. For you, maybe it was you didn't get accepted in a school, you didn't get that job, friends or a lover rejected you, or something else. For me, it was my skin. One day you had an experience that made you want to change something about yourself. For you, maybe it was the way you walked, or the way you talked, or the way you dressed. For me, it was my hair. One day you woke up and longed to be loved, despite your fashion choices, your height, your age, your weight, or who you choose to love. I am an immigrant, born in the beauty of the sun, in the sunny isles of the Bahamas, born covered in skin, just like all of you. Your story is a love story. Just like the story of a Black immigrant, you seek acceptance in this world. You want to be loved. You want to give love. Once upon a time, you heard a Black immigrant talk about racism, one of love's biggest adversaries. As you listened, you conjured vivid recollections of this woman, this Black immigrant. You could see her that day. You could see her sadness the day a hairstylist refused to cut her hair after she revealed on the telephone that she was Black. You could see the hate-filled gaze of the restaurant worker who practically threw her order at her. You could see her that very day. One of her students called her the N-word in the hallway in a Canadian middle school. You could taste her tears, feel her heartbreak. You could see her desire for love, acceptance, just wanting to move through the world in her skin, just like you. Once upon a time, a Black immigrant asked you to reflect on these vivid recollections. She asked you to denounce the actions of those who acted as barriers to her human story, her love story. Once upon a time, you heard a Black immigrant say, I refuse to call them racists. I refuse to tarnish their human story, their love story. They're people just like me who need to do better. We need to critically reflect on how our actions fuel racism and shame. Once upon a time, you lived through a global pandemic and witnessed protests that demand zero tolerance for racism and hate. You witnessed people put their health and lives on the line amidst a pandemic because the time has come to do better. We all have a responsibility to ensure we don't attach hate or shame to another's love story. I really don't know what you're thinking now. But my hope is that when you reflect on your human story, you remember that immigrant stories, Black stories, white stories, Indigenous stories, LGBTQ2S stories, stories of our environment, our planet, your story, my story, is a love story.